Okay, first off, let's set the record straight. My first anime I actually ever watched, like quote unquote anime, was Pokemon. Okay, that was like my first ever one, just to tell you guys. But I'm not counting it, because this was before I was but not a bad one. I just am very passionate about the things I like, and I really like the things I like. So if I watch a show, I'm like, dude, this thing is dope, then I'm gonna watch it and I'm gonna like it. So not counting Pokemon, because a lot of people like don't really count it as much as they probably should. Like, yeah, it's an anime, but it's not like an anime. Okay, so now I get to tell you guys the tragic tale of me watching my first anime. Okay, it was during the recent pandemic, and I was kind of just vibing. I was chilling. We'd been in it for like a bit, probably a couple of months, and online school hadn't kicked off yet. It was kind of like it was during the summer of like the beginning of the pandemic for school. And oh shoot, and I know this is going to be really unpopular because the anime of choice is what a lot of people's anime of choice, what first one was, but I'll get to that in a minute. The pandemic was relatively hard on my sister, like it was relatively hard on most people, so she started watching like shows and playing games and stuff like that, and she had a grand old time. But one of the things she started doing, and sorry to expose you, but you're kind of the crux of this whole story, was that she started watching anime. Of course, at the time, I didn't know this, and I don't really know a ton of background on the subject, but she knows me pretty well. I mean, she's my twin sister after all, okay? What else do you expect? And when she'd watch these shows, she'd tell me about them because she didn't really have anyone else to talk about them. At the time, I just thought, I was like, oh, because I'm here. It's probably because, she didn't want to like talk to any of her friends about anime. But that's besides the point. And she'd be like, oh my gosh, there's this anime and this happened. And oh my gosh, Sean, this happened. And oh, this guy died. And see, one of my favorite pastimes during this was I had no investment in these shows that she'd watch. So she'd tell me about how her favorite character just died, or how these two people broke up, and I'd be like, Lamau, bad cause bad. Imagine, wouldn't be me, honestly. Like, I just wouldn't do that, and I would just, because I had no attachment to this story that she was watching and immersed in, so I would laugh at it, and it would be really funny. And she just told me, she was like, okay, listen, Sean, there's this one anime that I know that you would love, okay? Like, it's your thing. You love video games, you play them, it'd be great. I love this anime, and I'm sure you would love it too. And, so she tried to get me to start watching it and just different stuff like that. And then one day, she told me the premise of it, okay? And the premise was basically a bunch of people get trapped inside a video game, but not just like any video game. When they get trapped in, it's like they're in there. They get stuck inside the video game. In order to get out, they have to beat a bunch of floors and they have to survive. But if you die in the game, you die in real life. And I sat there and I was kind of like, what? That is literally the plot of the latest Ninjago season. You know the Ninjago season where, they get stuck in a video game, and if you die in the video game, you basically die in real life. Like, that was like literally the plot. I'm like, bro, did they steal that from Ninjago? Obviously, it wasn't stolen from Ninjago. If anything, Ninjago took inspiration from it. But I was like, what's this show? Like, what's it called? And she's like, oh, well, the show's called Sword Art Online. And I was like, you mean like the video game? And she's like, there's a video game? I'm like, yeah, like the video game. Like, I didn't remember what the video game looked like, but I've heard the name because, I'd seen like a trailer or commercial or something about it before. So I was a bit intrigued, and she's like, oh my gosh, you need to watch this. I was like, okay, maybe I will. I had no intention of watching it, honestly. Like, for me, when she told me about this show, like in my head, I pictured it as like a Netflix show, like something like a live action Netflix show of a bunch of people stuck in a video game. And she told me like, oh, there's this guy, the main character, and he joins like a guild with like all his new friends, and all of his friends just get like killed, and it was so sad, Sean. It was so sad. I'm like, imagine. So that's kind of what I pictured when she told me, but no, I literally couldn't have been more wrong. So eventually, and I probably haven't said this, but like obviously spoilers about the plot, but this show's like really old and everyone hates it. So if you haven't already guessed what my first anime technically was, it was SAO, Sword Art Online. Man, and I remember this so vividly. Like, I think a month or two passes or something, and one day she just comes into my room crying. I'm playing Minecraft, as younger me did all the time, and she's crying. I'm like, oh my gosh, what happened? And she pulls out her phone and she's like, oh my gosh, like this in the show, like the show is talking about like like SAO, like this guy just died. And I was like, what? And I was like, okay, I got like no investment in the story. She's like, look how sad this is. I just watched the saddest thing of my life. And she shows me, and she proceeds to show me the clip of this main guy dying. If you're familiar with SAO, you probably know what I'm talking about. Season 3, guy dies, really sad, okay? And at the time, like I watch it and, it's like, oh, no one's ever really gone. They're with you. They're always with you in their heart. We got to go separate paths now, but you'll be fine. She basically spoiled the ending of season 3 for me, but like I forgot about it by the time I actually watched it. And, she showed me like the whole ending scene with like the cliffhanger, and I was like, whoa, that's so cool. That's so awesome. By the time when she finished showing it to me, I was kind of sitting there and I was like, okay. I actually started laughing and she was so offended. She's like, why are you laughing? It's so sad. I'm like, yeah, but like it's funny, because I have no context. I'm not attached to it. The funny thing is now when I look back at it, I'm actually really sad when I watch it. I'm like, oh my gosh, that sucks. Like I'm not like crying sad, but it's really funny how things went like full circle. Among Us drip, bro, you're an idiot, dude. I can sit here all day until your thing runs out. But when she showed me that, my first reaction wasn't to laugh. When she first started showing me the clip, I had one very bad realization. I looked at her and I was like, wait. This is an anime? And she's like, yeah, it's an anime. Wait, are all the shows you've been telling me about anime? And she's like, yeah. And I had no idea. And honestly, I was just some regular kid, just some normal quote unquote kid who hated anime at the time. I mean, I hadn't even seen it. Okay. But I was like, ugh, anime, because of all the stereotypes, So I didn't like it. And I was like, oh my gosh, my sister is watching anime. And I think she got my brother hooked on anime too. Like I can't hate anime like as much anymore. But I was still like against it, But I humored her by watching the clip. And then, man, months go by. And I think Jillian really just wanted someone to watch it with her and someone she could talk about it with. Because one day she's like, you're going to watch this show. And I'm like, Jillian, I really don't like anime. I don't know if you'd understand. I'm not watching the show. And one day, crack of dawn. And when I say crack of dawn, I mean probably like 8:30, 9 o'clock. A few months later, just a while later, she comes bursting into my room with her laptop and it's got Netflix open. And she's like, Sean, wake up. I'm like, why are you waking me up? And she's like, you're watching a show with me. And she just like forces me to watch the first, three episodes, I think, of SAO. And I will say, I don't remember all the comments I made. I don't remember all the comments I made about it. I do remember that the main character in the show, he's got a avatar at the beginning before he gets like his original look. And I sat there, I was like, oh my gosh, is this just him the whole time? She's like, oh, he changes later. I'm like, thank goodness, bro. Because I was not vibing with it. I'm used to like anime and stuff like now, but at the time I was not messing with the way anime looked. See, I think one of the things that helped me watch this, I watched like Cartoon Network. I watched like Marvel Spider-Man and Avengers and like all that stuff. So like I was aware of it. And before you ask, we watched it in dub, by the way. Listen, guys, that's how I grew up watching anime, watching dub. Okay, I like dub. Bryce Papenbrook, he's my guy. Okay, like that is a really unpopular opinion, but I like it. I prefer to be able to look away from my screen for like 2 seconds and then still know what's going on. Like listen, you guys got no counter for that. You can say whatever you want. You can say whatever you want about it. Anyway, so we watch it and like the first 3 episodes, and it was right after that one episode we like stopped. First 4 episodes, sorry, because we watched the first episode, the first and second episode, which was like the beginning, introducing you to everything, and then the second and the third episode is when like his whole guild gets murked. That was funny. I was laughing during that whole thing because I still wasn't invested in characters. I don't really laugh nowadays, but I still don't really care much for the characters because there's this one girl, just get a little personal. There's this one girl in that guild, and she kind of tried to make some moves on the main character, and like the main character wasn't being like, nah, bro, he's just some like teenager. It's like, oh, this girl's kind of interested in me. This is dope. So I kind of dislike her a lot because that's not like the main girlfriend, I'm just saying. saying. Oh, shoot. So that's the main reason I don't like the guild, just because that one girl. She's trying to take my mans away from the main girl in the show. Trying not to give spoilers, but like I kind of am. Third episode where the guild dies in the fourth episode when he like gets little twerp and he solos like an entire evil guild, and I thought that was like actually pretty cool. It's like, dude, that's sick, dude. I think that's what started my love for overpowered main characters. Like all the complaints people have about SAO, like, oh, the character's too overpowered, oh, he gets like all the girls, oh, like blah blah blah. I was like, dude, those are all the reasons I love the show. I mean, come on, he gets like, think about it, right? He gets all the girls, but he still only picks the main one. Dude, that's pretty cool. I vibe with that. Anyway, that's kind of where it ended. And then Jillian leaves, and then giant time skip. Okay, I'm talking like a lot of months go by. Yeah, like a while goes by, like a big time skip. And I'm kind of just sitting, I'm bored, okay? Because we're still in the pandemic. I'm sitting there, I'm like, I got nothing to do. But for the past few days, I was kind of thinking about SAO, a little bit. I was like, that show's on Netflix, right? Like, listen, I don't like the show, but like, I'm not gonna lie, I kind of want to see what happens next. So I go onto it and I start watching it, and I'm immediately obsessed with it, dude. I'm like, this show is bomb, okay? And I didn't like the show for the same reasons I like it today, because the thing with me and that show was I was obsessed with it. I've probably watched it like 37 times, I think it was, because the thing is, I would watch it and do other things. I like would just watch it just straight up, and every time I watched it, I would rewatch it, and I kind of got a little bit of a sense of rewatching it all over again. Maybe the reason I like the show so much is I'm really good at turning my brain off and enjoying things, so I could just turn my brain off and rewatch it all over again and have like the same reactions I did and notice things I didn't notice before, and it was just an overall good time. Later, Jillian came into my room to talk to me about Sword Art again. It happened again. She wanted to talk to me about it, and I didn't want to let her know that I was watching the show now, right? So I was kind of just like, oh yeah, you still, I think she either came in there to talk to me about it, or I said like, oh, you still watching that one show you showed me? Like, what was it called? Like Sword something. She's like, oh yeah, and she was talking to me about like the second arc in the show, which like not a lot of people like, a lot of people hate it. And I don't remember if at the time she said she was on that arc. I don't think that's what it was, because I remember she was telling me stuff about like the third season Alicization. So for whatever reason, she brought up that arc and she said it wrong. She was like Alfim or something like that. I was like, you mean Alfheim? And she's like, oh yeah, wait a second. And she had this like little grin on her face, and she's like, you're watching the show. And I'm like, and then she kind of just started like fangirling over it a little bit. She's like, oh, this happens and this happens and this happens and blah blah blah, but I don't want to spoil it. And I'm like, don't spoil, and it was a really good time. Okay. And here's the thing, that was the only anime I watched for a really long time. I mean, I'd finished the anime and I was like, oh, I want more. So I would rewatch it again, okay? And I would rewatch it again. And then the next season like came out, like the latest season so far, like it came out, and I watched that. I was like, and I watched it all in English dub. And I still do to this day. I watch everything in dub. I mean, pardon my French, but I still haven't watched the new Attack on Titan season because the dub hasn't come out yet. Sorry, not sorry.